Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sports Department Podcast. It's time for some NBA first-round playoff talk with Stephen Bologna, Stephen Clark, and Jesse Norman. Now, we are pretty much done with the first round of the playoffs, just have one more series to wrap up, and that is the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. Dallas does lead that series 3-2, and it's been a very fun playoff so far. But before we get into anything, how you guys doing?
I'm doing well for the most part. Outside of sports, I'm doing fantastic. Summer's, right around the corner. Weather's nice and warm. Bars are opening, clubs are opening. Everyone's outside. Mask mandates are getting lifted. It feels like life's getting back to normal, and I can't complain about that. So I'm doing well, Steve. I'm doing very well.
Good.
I'm doing pretty well. Looking forward to this second round. I think more than you guys are for personal reasons.
A little bit.
Jesse's ragtag bunch of Nets players making it out of the first round to face the Milwaukee Bucks. Just a quick overview of what the first round has brought us. Starting in the West, Utah beat Memphis 4-1. I already touched on the Mavericks Clippers series. Denver and Portland almost went the full distance, but Denver wins it 4-2. We're going to talk about Portland and if they should blow it up. The King will not be in the playoffs anymore this year, losing to Phoenix 4-2 in what was a weird last few games for them. Philadelphia 76ers don't complete the sweep, but they win 4-1 against the Wizards. The Atlanta Hawks embarrass the Knicks, winning that series 4-1. Milwaukee embarrasses the Miami Heat.
All right.
4-0 with a sweep. And Brooklyn takes care of business in Boston, winning that series 4-1. So, Jesse, I'm going to let you start off. What series do you want to highlight first?
Well, I think the one we should talk about first is the one we probably don't know the ending of yet, and that's Clippers Mavs. I mean, I've watched every game or tried to watch most of every game of the playoffs, and it's clear watching this series the Clippers don't have any kind of answer for Luka Doncic. A stat that went around from Game 5 that the Mavs won. They had 37 total field goals as a team. Luka scored or assisted on 31 of them. They had six without Luka Doncic. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Doncic is the best 22-year-old that the NBA has ever seen. He, at 22, is better than Jordan was, is better than LeBron was, is better than pretty much anybody, I think, maybe if you go back until, I don't know, Wilt or something like that. But he is absolutely incredible. And then on the flip side, if the Clippers lose this series, Kawhi's free agency is pending. There's no assets left. They don't have their only asset is Paul George, who was Kawhi Leonard's hand-picked running mate, because they traded everything for Paul George. So I don't know. I think this series has potentially the biggest fallout potentially moving forward into the offseason, because do I think Kawhi's going to leave? I honestly don't. I think he chose LA the city more than he chose LA the team. I think he wanted to be there no matter what. So I have a hard time seeing him leaving that situation that he handpicked, even though they have underperformed. It seems like in press conferences and everything that they've kind of scaled it up to be, oh, well, this isn't a 1 to 2 year thing. We really have to build something here. So I don't think it's panic mode necessarily for them if they lose. But that being said, it is a huge underfall of where they're supposed to be, because so many people expected them to be in the finals, especially if you heard the Lakers were out first round before the playoffs started. I'm pretty sure everybody here would be like, oh, well, the Clippers are coming out of the West then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with basically all the points you said. It all just comes back to, in this series, it's stopping Luka. It's literally just stopping Luka. He's unstoppable in this series. It's exciting to see, like you said, a young player succeed so well in these high pressure situations, and I think Clippers have to reassess, especially if they get eliminated in this round. They have to reassess what's going on here. I disagree though with you, Jesse. I think Kawhi might want to test the waters a little bit and see what teams are offering. If I think he might want to dip. I really do, because I think he's not experiencing the success that he wanted to when he came over here. He's really not. Everything has kind of fell flat. We know how Paul George played in last year's playoffs. He wasn't too hot either. But they have to do some serious reassessing here.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, Kawhi and Paul George. I mean, that was a monumental 2 hour that happened, 2 years ago when Kawhi signs and the Clippers pull off the trade for Paul George. But, you're talking about a one-man army down there in Dallas. Doncic averaging 35 a game. And you look at his supporting cast. I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. is nothing too great. Boban Marjanovic. I mean, Kristaps is solid, but he's not incredible. Not what they traded him.
Kristaps is not. Yeah, I would argue Tim Hardaway is the better player than Kristaps Porzingis right now.
Yeah, he kind of has been stinking. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like you said with the Clippers, they were expected to be in at least the WCF last year. They're expected to be there this year, and if this is 2 years in a row that they horribly fall under their expectations, I think Kawhi, like you said, Clark, I think Kawhi starts to listen to other offers from other teams, because you can't, he wanted to go to the Clippers and prove that he can lead a team. He did it with Toronto, and rightfully so. He chased the bag and got his money, but they're not winning. And I think Kawhi's the type of guy that cares about winning more.
Well, interestingly enough, a team that could make a run at him this offseason if he does decide to opt out would be Toronto. They have the cap space with Kyle Lowry's contract coming off. I really think that might be the only place he would leave the Clippers for is Toronto, because he knows the organization won a championship there. That being said, I don't think he wants to go back east where he's going to have to deal with the big three in Brooklyn. He's going to have to deal with Milwaukee. Philly's not going anywhere right now. Yes, he did beat those teams a couple years ago now, but these are different teams. I think we're going to see a swing in the next year or two, and you could even argue right now, where the East is better than the West.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly shaping up that way. Considering the Nets, the powerhouse they are, the Milwaukee Bucks, they have arguably the best player in the league. The Sixers have 2 top players in the league. So I think that's a real possibility, but we'll see what happens with the rest of this series. Clark, what series would you
What do you guys think? What do you guys think how do you guys think Clippers Mavs ends? I think Mavs win.
I think Mavs
win I think Mavs win tonight. Well, this will be posted after 6. Yeah, I think Mavs win in 6.
Yeah, we're
get the first home win.
Yeah. We're recording this Friday, June 4th, just for the get that out there, just so make sure we're not cheating or anything. But yeah, no, I agree. This Mavericks in 6. I agree.
Who's home tonight? It's at Dallas. It is at Dallas.
Yeah.
Ooh, just
this
for
would be the first home win.
Yeah. I'm gonna go
of the series. The roads won every single game.
Yeah, the away teams won every one. That's crazy.
I'm gonna go Dallas.
All right. Yeah.
I think I'm going Dallas. I trust Luka.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Steve Clark, any series you want to look at?
Well, let's get Jesse on his high horse very quickly. We'll go to this one. Hey man, Brooklyn Nets, baby. The Brooklyn Nets, Boston Celtics. It's what we expected from this series. Granted, they put up one good game. Boston, good for them for trying to beat down
Jason Tatum.
Yeah, Tatum put up 50.
True.
Yeah.
They just look dominant. It's very hard to see a team that's gonna, beat the Nets, and especially a 7-game series. They work together really, really well. I know one of my criticisms coming into the playoffs was that will they be able to scheme together and be able to work together? Because throughout the whole regular season, the big three hasn't really played with each other too much, and that was one of my criticisms coming into the postseason. And they obviously proved me wrong. They 100% proved me wrong, and they showed that in basketball, as long as you have the superstar talent on the team, you can succeed, and that's what they did.
Jesse, I'm curious. The Nets, obviously, they did this with ease, as we expected them to. Now, it's also worth noting with Boston, Danny Ainge is resigning from his position, and Brad Stevens is taking over the old Ainge position in the front office. So Boston's going to start looking for head coaches. But Boston, I think at the end of the series, they put up 110 plus points per game as the average. Does that concern you with Brooklyn's defense at all?
I mean, there's some concern that I have with the defense. Most of it falls in Blake Griffin's hands, honestly. Blake didn't play good that whole series, period. He did not play good. He's got to play better for them to have a good series against Milwaukee. If he doesn't, he needs to have a short leash, and they got to throw Claxton out there because he was bad. There was no other way to put it. He was bad in that Boston series. But everybody else played great. The defense, there's issues here and there. But I think something that people haven't realized is James Harden has been one of the better defenders in the playoffs, period. He's holding opponents to under 30% shooting when he is guarding them. He's ridiculous. That's a guy that in switches, he's going to be on Giannis, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's our best defender on the best offensive player for Milwaukee. But I've said before, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, I think Brooklyn and Milwaukee are the two best teams in the NBA. I think whoever wins this series wins the NBA Finals. I think this is going to be the biggest series in the playoffs overall in general. This is going to be the one with the most intrigue and with the most backlash going forward.
I want to just go back to your point really, really quickly about you want Harden on Giannis. That's a big size disadvantage for Harden. Do you really think he could stop Giannis from backing into the paint?
Size, I do. I think there is enough strength in Harden. As a post defender, Harden is ridiculously stout. Like watching him, I seen Tristan Thompson try to throw his entire body into him, and Harden just stood there like it was nothing.
That's Tristan Thompson. This is Giannis, though.
Oh, I agree. But you could argue Tristan Thompson's bigger and beefier than Giannis.
He is beefier, but is he? He's not as agile and he's not as quick around the basket.
Don't get me wrong. Giannis is going to average 35 on the Nets. There's no. I'm not saying they're locking Giannis up.
I know the pain,
and that's fine. Like I definitely think Giannis is going to average 30 plus. He's going to average 12, 15 rebounds, probably around 6 to 8 assists. But also looking at what they did in Boston, the big three scored over 80 points together pretty much every single game. So people can say, Drew Holiday covering James Harden. Do you know how that went in Houston? James Harden averages over 29 points when Drew Holiday guards him. James Harden also averages over 28 points when Chris Middleton guards him. Mm-hmm. So there's logs out there, there's games out there where you can't just say, Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton are going to be able to guard Kyrie Irving and James Harden. It statistically doesn't. It's not true. So I think for both Milwaukee and Brooklyn, it's going to really come down to what that supporting cast can do. And Milwaukee just lost a big part of their supporting cast with Dante DiVincenzo. Now, if they have to play Bryn Forbes more now, that's great for their offense, but the Nets are going to pick him apart on defense every single time down the floor. I cannot stress enough how bad of a defender Bryn Forbes is. Like, they would put him in pick and rolls, switch him on to either Kyrie, KD, James Harden, doesn't matter which one, and they're going to get either fouled or they're going to go get a bucket. It's going to be one or the other. I think this series has a lot going into it. Again, I think the championship winner comes out of this series. But as of right now, I do think Brooklyn should be the favorite. They played Milwaukee good all year. They did lose 2 games. They were never at full health. And they beat them on MLK Day with only KD and Kyrie, while Milwaukee was playing with all 3 of theirs. I think it's going to be a really good series, though. I think this one has the most intrigue to it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of fireworks just early in the second round here with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And like you said, it's all going to come down to what can Middleton do and what can Holiday do, because they played well against the Heat. As we dive into that series, Clark, I mean, they played well against the Heat.
Yeah.
Milwaukee looked pretty unstoppable, barring game one, which was very close, went into overtime. But I just don't think Milwaukee has the chops to take down Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn's just too good. You have 3 of the top 15 players in the league, 2 of arguably the top 5, 2 of the best scorers we've ever seen. It's just the only way Milwaukee can do it is if they attack Brooklyn's weak spot on defense. But I think the offense of Brooklyn is too good to slow down.
Yeah, well, looking at the Milwaukee-Miami series too, I think, and this is no disrespect to Miami. They had a great run last year. They did their thing in the bubble. They made it to the finals. They never felt like the same team this year. No. And everybody kind of expected them to flip that switch as soon as we got to the playoffs, but it clearly didn't happen. No. And look, they were playing. Them and the Lakers both got kicked out the first round. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, that should make it so you see that the bubble wasn't as effective. No. Well, I can look at it as the off season was way shortened for them. They had like 80 days off. Like those guys are gassed.
Yeah, of course I'm looking at it from that perspective because that's my team, but I think
it's valid.
Even if you
it's by far the shortest offseason any teams have ever had.
Even if you look at the Celtics too, who also had a pretty short offseason after going with the Miami Heat in Eastern Conference Finals, pretty short offseason too. Not as short as the Heat and the Lakers, but they also got bounced in the first round too. And the Celtics are always known for having a good team. But it didn't feel the same this year for the Heat. Obviously, I'm not going to blame it on injuries, but injuries do happen. Injuries happen throughout the year. And even on the
Oladipo killed you guys. That hurt.
Yeah, that trade, not bringing back Jay Crowder hurt. I loved having Jay Crowder. Sending, even though Olynyk was kind of stinky, sending him to Houston with, like you said, the Oladipo trade, and then Oladipo being out for the rest of the year, which would have been a nice core third guy to have on the team, a third star to have. It just
at least a defender.
Exactly. It just didn't feel the same. I knew we weren't the same team. I knew Milwaukee was miles ahead better. I always know how we play Milwaukee tough, which we did see in the first game, like you mentioned, went to overtime, and that was a heartbreaking loss with Middleton's game-winning shot. But after that, the games weren't close. It just felt demoralizing after that. Like, all right, we lost in overtime. That's basically it. Everyone kind of, put it away. Playoff Jimmy didn't really show up too much, and that's what happens. That's what happens.
I think Milwaukee is a great team. I think they're the second best team in the NBA. That being said, I do think their stock has been a little overly inflated because of this series with the Heat. Let's be real about it. Dragic didn't play good. Tyler Herro shouldn't have even been on the court. My goodness, he played absolutely terrible. Robinson, very up and down. Very good couple games. Bam couldn't get buckets majority of the series. But Butler didn't play good. There were multiple factors that I think, to a certain degree, the media looked at this sweep as, oh my God, they just swept the Eastern Conference defending champions. But it wasn't the same team, and it didn't feel like the same team. So while kudos to Milwaukee, great for them, they did. I think the stock in Miami was way too high to start off the year and to start the playoffs. This was not a team that should have had finals aspirations to any degree.
Heat, unfortunately, Steve Clark eliminated from the playoffs. Milwaukee and the Brooklyn Nets will be facing off. Now, a series I want to look into. This is a finals that's going to be without the king, LeBron James. And they lose to Phoenix, a very young and hungry team in Phoenix, 4-2, and a lot of it coming with the Anthony Davis injuries from game 3 on. Did not play the final games. The Lakers were up 2-1 at one point, and then the Suns go on a run. And what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do the Lakers need another star? Can the Suns win it all? I mean,
I hate to harp on this again, but it was injuries. It was straight up injuries in a short amount of time. I think one of the biggest thing is LeBron should not have came back this season. I really, really think once he got hurt, he just should have stayed out, took the season as an L, move on to the next one. I feel like having him out there, they were relying too much on him, and he wasn't 100%. You saw he wasn't the same LeBron as we've seen in the past. And obviously, having your second biggest star, Anthony Davis, trying to come back, getting hurt, come back, getting hurt. It's just not a good look. It's a lot of false hope that they were given for, a team that also wasn't the same. And Schroeder was absolutely horrible too. He stunk. He says he's coming back, but he took like the Lakers out of his Instagram bio. I don't really care what he does.
Is it true that he wants like $100 million or something?
Yeah.
He wants money. Yeah, he wants big money.
But he didn't show up when he needed to. Plain and simple.
No, he didn't at all. And this was a guy that Lakers fans were saying was the best point guard LeBron's played with and is on the same level as Kyrie Irving. It's acidine. But I think the injuries definitely play a part. But here's the problem with that. If you're playing with Anthony Davis, that's part of the game because Anthony Davis gets hurt every single year. He's always going to get injured. This was just the first year since Davis got there. We've seen the first year in LA that LeBron actually got an injury. LeBron's been an Iron Man in the NBA for so long. You would love for them to go out and get a third star if they could. I don't think they can. I don't think there's assets there. They kind of already have given up all their assets for Davis, and they won the championship. So, I mean, it worked out for them no matter what. They got their ring. But I think a guy that, like Bradley Beal, who usually doesn't really miss time, plays a lot of games, can literally just win you regular season games, can get you to the playoffs mostly by himself. Or going out in free agency, maybe targeting DeMar DeRozan, who's from LA. I think that should be their kind of move because this team as it is now is not constructed to win an NBA championship. And God, don't re-sign Andre Drummond. There should be a thing sent out to every single NBA team. Do not sign Andre Drummond. I think it's hilarious. There are still people out there that are like, no, Drummond is a good player. He's going to go out there. He's going to get you 10 points and 16 rebounds. No, he's not. Drummond is not good. And I think they took themselves out of this series, yes, with the injuries and everything, but also their insistence on starting Drummond and their insistence on playing him next to Anthony Davis, when in reality, Anthony Davis should be playing the center position. Somebody needs to have that talk with him. I've been on this for 2 years now. The Lakers are a better team when Davis plays center. And for some reason, he's like, no, I am a power forward.
No.
I am the 4.
No.
It's tough because this team really wasn't as good as the one last year. And some people want to point like, oh, well, they didn't really lose any big pieces. They lost Rondo. They lost, some players here and there, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard. But they brought in guys like Marc Gasol and Schroeder and everything. But they weren't the same team. They weren't as focused as the team was last year. And I expect them, they're going to have to do something in the offseason. I don't necessarily know what it is. But I think like a swap of Schroeder and DeMar DeRozan would be good. I think they have to go out and get something else because as of right now, they are not built to keep up in the West where there's teams like Dallas and Phoenix that are only going to be looking to get better and better. And they're young. And we haven't even mentioned Denver yet and how young they are and how good they look.
I give props to Phoenix too because Jesse, I talked to you last night about it. They pull off a trade for Mccall Bridges on draft night 2 years ago. And, Mccall Bridges has quickly turned into a top two-way player in the league, one of the best young ones. They get a lot of slack from taking Cam Johnson, pick 11, a few years back. And he's turned out to be a good scorer, a solid defender. And you have to give Chris Paul so much credit. I mean, this guy sent the Thunder to the playoffs last year, and the Thunder were bad. they were not a good roster. So you already have Ayton, you have Devin Booker, two young stars. If Chris Paul's here past this season, I mean, that's good. But I think the Suns, they have a good matchup against an injured team in Denver. I think they make the Western Conference Finals, and I think they have a very good chance of at least getting to the finals. I really do.
Yeah. The thing with Denver is going to be Ayton on Jokic and how that's going to work. That I think that's where the series starts and ends, is pretty much there. And obviously Denver's supporting cast has to play well. But I do think that's going to be a good kind of check on Ayton to see where exactly he is in his development.
Yeah.
I'm liking either Phoenix or the Mavericks to get to the finals at this point. I think that's what we're heading towards right now. That would be awesome to see that either one of these teams. I feel like it's a lot of like small market teams. It's very, very different, Knicks, Heat, Lakers, Celtics, a lot of these teams that big name teams or teams that you're used to succeeding are either eliminated or whatnot. So it's very interesting to see who's coming out of the West, because it could turn a small market into a bigger market too. It could be better for the league. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, there's the most important team in the NBA we have yet to talk about. Jesse's hometown favorite, New York Knicks. Unfortunately, losing 4 out of 5 to Atlanta. And, I'm happy that I was able to see at least one playoff win this go around. I mean, it just makes me laugh how quickly the NBA just and their fans just make fun of the Knicks. Coming into the year, the Knicks are projected to be a top 3 terrible team in the league, and they go to the playoffs and no more shit talking from fans. And then all of a sudden they lose, and it's like, haha, the Knicks lose. Like, they suck. But it's like they weren't supposed to be here in the first place.
The only reason I've been talking crap about the Knicks is because they won one playoff game, and all of a sudden in the streets of New York they're chanting, we want Brooklyn, which not even if they win this series, Brooklyn's next. They have to win 2 series to get to Brooklyn. That's the only reason why I'm crapping on the Knicks. I love the packed atmosphere in Madison Square Garden. I loved the villainous nature of Trae Young. I thought it was a phenomenal storyline of these underdog Knicks against the big bad villain and balding Trae Young. It was entertaining television at its finest. It felt like I was watching like wrestling or something. Like it really felt like I was watching like a movie. It was really, really entertaining. And I'm not going to give the Knicks that much crap, because they played their hearts out every single minute on that court. Randall didn't show up, but what are you going to do? Derrick Rose was phenomenal in a bunch of games. He really stepped up, and that was awesome to see, because I was a huge, huge Derrick Rose fan when I was younger. So that was really, really cool to see. But my Alexa just went off. But it was really, really nice to see New York thriving like that. And granted, you didn't get the results that you wanted. And the Hawks, they're the decent team. They're not the best team that you lost to, but this is a stepping stone for the Knicks. It's a really, really big stepping stone. Maybe you get a superstar to come to New York now and help out Julius Randle there, because I don't think Julius Randle's the number 1 guy in that team. I really, really don't.
Julius Randle should have. I'm sorry, on a championship team, Julius Randle is the 3rd, maybe 4th option.
Yeah, I'd say 3rd.
He's a great He's a guy that he's going to get you regular season wins. Not at that Russell Westbrook level per se, but kind of comparable to a Russell Westbrook. If he's playing at the level that he played at for the Knicks this year, you're going to get to the playoffs. He's going to take on the offensive load, but in reality, your ceiling is not that high. I wasn't surprised at how Randall played in the playoffs, because defense tightens up. It was clear that the Hawks were trying to make him uncomfortable the entire game. He didn't have a good shooting game the whole time. They really tried to take the game out of his hands, and they did, and it worked. I'm happy for the Knicks. This is what a Tom Thibodeau team is. He's going to go out. He's going to get his guys. He's going to mix them in with a younger group. They're going to be competitive. The thing with the Knicks is now everybody is, oh, superstar. We got to go out. We got to go get a guy. If you go out and get a guy, the premium on star players isn't what Paul George was a couple years ago with the Sabonis and Oladipo trade. It's not Jimmy Butler to the Heat. It's not those. Look at what the Nets gave up for James Harden. Look at what the Clippers gave up for Paul George. The star on star players, the price you pay is a lot higher now. If they're going to get a star player, RJ Barrett's going to be included in that deal. Quickly might be included in that deal. Obi Toppin, who was bad most of the regular season, but actually had a pretty decent playoffs, is going to be involved in that deal. And then even if, you want to leave one of those guys out, that's fine. Add in probably 2 first-round picks for each one that you leave off. So I think it's tough. And then, shifting to a team that, people have said maybe a guy who's going to look for a trade in Portland. Denver obviously won the series. Good for them. They probably can't make the finals without Jamal Murray. They had Jamal Murray. They're honestly my pick to make it out of the West, far and away for me. But does Portland, unless Dame goes out and definitively says, I need a trade, I am not playing here, which, by the way, he just signed a deal. He is signed through 2024 to 2025. He has 4 years left on his deal. Unless he goes out and says that, I don't think there's any scenario where they trade Damian Lillard. I think they maybe trade CJ McCollum. I think they maybe, move Covington for something. Maybe they move Nurkic. Like there's other pieces. They have Simons as a backup point guard. They could probably move him for a wing. There are things on that roster that they can move, but I don't think Damian Lillard is going to be one of them.
Yeah.
I want to stick on that for 1 minute before we wrap this up. I just want to say, where do we think Dame's going to be playing at the start of the season of 2021-2022?
I still say Portland. Yeah, I don't think he's going to move.
I'm going to say for now, I don't think he's going to be in Portland. I really, really don't think he's going to be there.
I don't know what team has the assets to trade for him and to still be a good team besides maybe the Knicks, maybe. And I think that's about it.
Of course,
Boston, maybe.
Unless Portland like tears it down.
Yeah.
Like are we thinking Portland just absolutely like trades everything off, tries to build it back up again? Or are they trying to stay competitive?
There's 2 teams in mind for me. One, I'm going to shill for a second. I'm going to say the Heat. We have a bunch of young guys to give up. We can give up Hero, Robinson, Nunn.
The Heat have to always be included in trade talks because they're
Miami,
that's what they do.
Plus Miami too.
Yeah.
Another one I'm not counting out is going back home for Damian Lillard, and going back home is in Oakland, and that's the Golden State Warriors. I really think you give up Wiseman, you give up Wiggins, give up a couple of picks. I really, really think they could rebuild that team again. I really, really think so. I'm not counting that out yet.
They wouldn't play any defense. Absolutely zero defense would be played.
Yeah, Draymond
Steph Curry, there. Dame Lillard. And then you have Clay coming off an Achilles and ACL tear, playing the 3.
I'm not counting that out.
I mean, they'd shoot.
Something
It'd be insane.
Tell me about that. I don't know why. It just is. But
well, we'll see what happens. But thank you all so much for listening. Stay tuned for more eps, and we'll see you next time.